It was no accident. After my son's funeral, I went to the hospital to pick up his belongings, and suddenly a nurse stopped me. "Your son asked me to give you this." A note. "My wife is lying. It was not an accident." And a flash drive. I opened the contents and handed it over to the FBI. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. The crowd had already scattered by the time I stood alone at Mark's grave. Lakeview Cemetery stretched out in all directions, headstones marching up the hillside like silent witnesses. The service ended 20 minutes ago. People offered their sympathies and left. Co-workers in ill-fitting suits, neighbors who barely knew my son, distant cousins making obligatory appearances. Now it was just me, the fresh earth, and the cold drizzle beginning to fall. I held Mark's work helmet in both hands. Yellow plastic, scratched from years of construction sites, with his name written in permanent marker along the rim. The police gave it to me 3 days ago when they told me about the accident. Scaffolding collapse, they said. Instantaneous, they said. He didn't suffer. I traced the letters of his name on the temporary marker. Mark Anthony Young, beloved son, husband, father. The stone would come later, something permanent with dates carved deep. Right now there was only wet earth and that cheap metal plate stuck in the ground. "Are you finished? We need to leave." Celeste's voice cut through the rain, sharp, impatient. I turned to find her standing by the black funeral car, one hand on her hip, the other gripping Emma's wrist. My granddaughter looked small in that oversized black dress, clutching her stuffed rabbit against her chest. I walked toward them, my shoes sinking slightly in the soft ground. "Celeste, I thought we could talk about Emma. She'll need stability now. I'd like to..." "You'd like to what? Take over? Control everything like you always tried to?" The words hit harder than the rain. "That's not fair. I only want to help." "We don't need your help. We never did." She adjusted her sunglasses even though the sky was nothing but gray clouds. Her designer dress probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. "She's my granddaughter. Mark would want..." "Don't tell me what Mark would want. You don't have any rights here. None." "Rights? I'm not talking about rights. I'm talking about family." Celeste laughed, sharp and bitter. "Family? That's rich coming from you." Emma tugged at her mother's hand, trying to break free. "Grandpa, can I come stay with you?" "No, Emma, get in the car." I knelt down, ignoring the mud soaking through my pants. "Sweetheart, Now, Emma." The little girl flinched. Celeste's fingers were wrapped too tight around that small wrist. I saw Emma wince, but she didn't cry out. She just looked at me with those wide brown eyes, Mark's eyes, and let herself be pulled toward the car. I stood slowly, my knees protesting. "When can I see her again?" "I'll let you know, maybe next month, maybe longer." "Next month, but..." "Goodbye, Edward." She walked away before I could respond, heels clicking on the paved path. Emma pressed her hand against the rear window as the car pulled away, watching me shrink into the distance. I raised my hand but didn't wave. My throat was too tight. That's when I noticed him. A man standing near the old oak tree about 30 feet away, half hidden by its trunk. Mid-30s, construction boots, leather jacket. He wasn't dressed for a funeral. More importantly, he wasn't mourning. He was watching Celeste's car disappear down the cemetery road. I'd seen him earlier, at the edge of the gathering during the service. Too casual, checking his watch. When Celeste walked past him toward her car, he'd followed at a distance, maintaining that careful space between them. He pulled out his phone and typed something. 10 seconds later, from where I stood, I saw Celeste's brake lights flash as her car paused at the cemetery gates. Her phone must have buzzed. She sat there for a moment, then drove on. Coincidence? Maybe. The man walked to a pickup truck parked on the access road and drove away in the opposite direction. I turned back to Mark's grave. The rain was coming down harder now, soaking through my suit jacket. But I didn't care. I placed my hand on the cold temporary marker. "I'll find out what happened, son. I promise you that." It wasn't grief talking. It was something colder, more deliberate. The engineer in me had already started cataloging inconsistencies. Mark died on a Tuesday morning. Celeste was shopping when it happened, she said. But the police mentioned she didn't cry when they told her. I didn't understand that then. I'd been too destroyed by my own loss to notice. Now I noticed. I thought about the way she'd checked her phone throughout our brief conversation. 4 times. 5. Each time with that little smile she tried to hide. Who texts at their husband's funeral? Who smiles? And that man, the one who didn't belong, the one watching Celeste like he knew her. I picked up Mark's helmet and walked through the cemetery gates toward my truck. The rain had soaked through to my skin, but my hands were steady. My mind was already working through the problem, breaking it down into components the way I'd taught myself to think 40 years ago, when I was studying structural engineering. Something was wrong. Mark's death didn't add up. I looked down at the helmet as I reached my truck. There was a small crack in the yellow plastic near the crown, a detail I'd missed before, like something had struck it. But the accident report said the scaffolding fell on Mark's body, not his head. The beam caught him at chest level, crushing his ribs and sternum. So, why was his helmet damaged at the top? I stood in the parking lot, rain streaming down my face, staring at that crack. The first flaw in the official story. I needed to see where it happened. I needed Mark's things from the hospital. I needed to understand every detail of that Tuesday morning. The funeral was over. The morning could wait. Now came the questions. I pulled into the Harborview Hospital visitor lot just after 8 the next morning. Same lot where I'd stood 4 days ago when Dr. Patterson found me and said those words, dead on arrival. I remembered the texture of the asphalt under my feet, the smell of diesel from an idling ambulance, the way my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Today my hands were steady. I wasn't here to grieve. I was here to collect what remained. Personal effects, they called it. The bureaucratic phrase for the last things my son touched. Inside the emergency department, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A tired clerk behind the desk barely looked up when I approached. Purpose of collecting deceased's effects? I'm his father. I need to settle his affairs. She slid a clipboard across the counter. Sign here, here, and initial here. I filled out the forms with careful block letters. Name, relationship, date. The pen felt heavy. Is this everything he had? Everything brought in by paramedics, personal items only. She handed me a sealed plastic bag. Through the clear material, I could see Mark's wallet, his wedding ring, removed before they tried to save him, his keys, a broken watch with the crystal shattered, and clothes cut away by emergency shears. I signed the final form and turned toward the exit. Mr. Young, wait. A young woman in scrubs stood near the automatic doors. She looked nervous, glancing over her shoulder like she was doing something wrong. I need to talk to you. It's about your son. My chest tightened. Did you treat him after the accident? No, before. 2 weeks before. He came in with a cut hand, minor. But he seemed... She hesitated. Scared. Scared? Mark? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. He made me promise something. If anything happened to him, I was supposed to give you this. She pulled a manila envelope from her pocket. Small, sealed with tape, with one word written across it in Mark's handwriting. Dad. My hands didn't shake when I took it. They should have. But something cold had settled over me, something that kept my fingers steady as I gripped the envelope. I thought he was being paranoid, she continued. Her name tag read, Lindsay. Then I heard about the accident and I'm sorry I didn't understand sooner. You did the right thing. She nodded and walked back into the emergency department, leaving me standing there with a plastic bag of my son's last possessions and an envelope I was terrified to open. I made it to my truck before the trembling started, not from fear, from the effort of holding myself together. I set the envelope on the passenger seat and drove home through morning traffic on Madison Street. A construction delay on Broadway added 15 minutes. Every red light felt like torture. The envelope sat there like a bomb with a timer I couldn't see. What had Mark been afraid of? Why give a warning to a nurse instead of just telling me? Because he was protecting me, I realized. He wanted proof first. Evidence that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. My house came into view, the craftsman-style home I'd built 30 years ago in Maple Leaf. Mark grew up in these rooms. He'd learned to walk on these floors, studied at the kitchen table, helped me expand the garage when he was 16. Every wall held memories. I parked and went straight to my study. Wood-paneled walls, my old drafting table in the corner, computer set up on the desk. I locked the door behind me, even though I lived alone. The envelope opened with a clean cut from my letter opener. Inside was a handwritten note and a small black flash drive. Mark's handwriting was rushed, shakier than normal. Dad, if you're reading this, I was right to be worried. My wife is lying. This wasn't an accident. I've been documenting everything for 3 months. Watch the videos, check the financial records, then decide what to do. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive. I needed to be certain. Now I am. Evidence is everything. Don't trust anyone until you've seen it all. Mark. Below that, one word underlined twice. Evidence. My hands were shaking again as I inserted the flash drive into my laptop. It took seconds to load. 5 files appeared. 3 videos, 1 audio recording, 1 folder labeled Financial. I clicked the first video. Grainy footage, bedroom angle, hidden camera. The timestamp showed 2 months ago. Celeste entered the frame wearing a robe. Then a man followed her. The same man from the cemetery yesterday. The one watching from the oak tree. They kissed. Not the kiss of new lovers, but familiar, practiced. Then they sat on the bed and talked. I turned up the volume. $2 million from the insurance, the man said. Herman. She called him Herman. Split 50-50. And if they investigate? Celeste's voice was casual, like they were discussing dinner plans. Construction accident. Everyone will buy it. You're the grieving widow. And the insurance. $2 million, maybe more if we claim emotional damages. Celeste laughed. Finally free, no more pretending. I paused the video, stood, walked to the window. My breath came short and sharp. I wasn't crying, I was calculating. This was murder, premeditated. My son had known and gathered proof. The second video showed Celeste at a computer. The camera angle revealed the screen. She was filling out an additional life insurance application on Mark. $2 million. Her hand moved across the signature line, forging his handwriting. The date was 3 months ago. The third video was shorter. Herman in work clothes, talking on his phone. Yeah, I can access the site Saturday night. No security cameras in that section. Loosen the bolts, weaken the joints. Monday morning, when he climbs up, a pause. No, it'll look completely natural. Metal fatigue, inspection failure, whatever. These things happen all the time. I forced myself to listen to the audio file next. Another phone conversation, Herman's voice again. The scaffolding inspection doesn't happen until next week. By then it'll be done. Mark Young will just be another workplace statistic. The financial folder contained screenshots and PDFs. Celeste had been systematically emptying Mark's accounts, transferring money to offshore accounts, taking out loans in his name. She'd even changed the beneficiary on his retirement fund without his knowledge. I sat in the dark study, the laptop screen the only light. I'd watched all 3 videos twice now. Every word was burned into my memory. They'd killed my son for money. For $2 million and freedom from a marriage she never wanted. Mark had known for months. He'd documented everything, hidden cameras in his own bedroom, recorded phone calls, saved financial evidence. He'd been building a case against his own wife. Why didn't he just leave? Why not go to the police? Because he wanted to protect Emma. If Celeste was arrested before the divorce, Emma would be caught in the system. Foster care, custody battles, trauma on top of trauma. Mark had been planning something. A clean divorce, full custody, evidence presented at exactly the right moment. But they'd move faster than he expected. I removed the flash drive and held it up to the light. This tiny piece of plastic was a weapon. But how to use it? Walk into the police station right now? Call a lawyer? My finger hovered over my phone. 911 was 3 digits away. Then I stopped. Celeste was convincing. She'd fooled Mark for who knows how long. She'd fooled the police when they notified her. She'd fool investigators too, given half a chance. She'd have explanations ready, lawyers prepared, ways to cast doubt on video evidence. Not yet, I whispered to the empty room. Not until I understand everything. Not until I know they can't escape. I spent the next hour making backups. Files copied to my computer hard drive. Files copied to an external drive. Files uploaded to cloud storage. 3 redundancies, an engineer's habit. Then I placed the original flash drive in my safe, spun the combination lock, and sat back down at my desk. I pulled out my notebook, engineering grid paper, the kind I'd used for 40 years. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote 2 names, Celeste Young and Herman Clark. Below that, I started listing everything I knew: dates, locations, connections. The videos showed their faces clearly. The audio had their voices. The financial records had digital timestamps. This was how I solve problems, step by methodical step. Break it down into components, analyze each piece, find the weak points, design the solution. Tomorrow I'd make my next move, but tonight I'd study every frame of those videos, every word of the audio, every transaction in the financial files. I'd become an expert on their crime, because when I struck, it would be perfect. Hours passed. Midnight became 1 o'clock, then 2. The coffee had gone cold in the cup beside my laptop, but I kept drinking it anyway. I'd watched the videos 4 times now, and each viewing revealed something new. A glance between Celeste and Herman, the casual way they discussed ending my son's life, the shopping lists Celeste was making for after Mark was dead. Now, I was deep in the financial folder, and what I found made my stomach turn. Spreadsheets, bank statements, loan applications. Celeste had systematically dismantled Mark's financial life while planning to dismantle his actual life. A home equity loan for $150,000, Mark's signature forged with practiced precision. His savings account, $87,000 accumulated over 15 years of careful saving, emptied in 3 transfers across 2 months. Every dollar vanished into accounts I didn't recognize. I clicked on a subfolder labeled Messages Timeline. Text message screenshots between Celeste and Herman, organized by date. I scrolled back 6 weeks and found it. Herman. Inspection scheduled Thursday. I'll loosen the bolts Tuesday night. Accident happens Wednesday morning. Celeste. Make it look natural, no traces. Herman. Relax. I've done structural work for 12 years. I know exactly which bolts matter. Wednesday morning, Mark died on a Wednesday morning, March 13th. I stood and walked to the window. The street outside was dark and silent. Normal people were sleeping. Normal people weren't learning that their sons had been murdered by people they trusted. Should I drive to the Seattle police right now? Bang on the door until someone listened? But I was an engineer, not a lawyer. I didn't know if digital files were admissible in court. Celeste could claim the videos were fabricated, deep fakes, manipulations. She'd hire expensive attorneys who'd create doubt. One mistake, one procedural error, could let them walk free. I returned to my laptop and opened a new browser window. I typed, FBI jurisdiction, insurance fraud. The answer appeared immediately. Insurance fraud over $100,000 falls under federal jurisdiction. Wire fraud. Interstate commerce. The FBI handles cases like this. They have forensic labs, experienced prosecutors, resources that local police can't match. And they're harder to manipulate. I leaned back in my chair, thinking. The FBI would build a case, slowly, methodically. But while they worked within the system, I could work outside it, legally but relentlessly. I could make Celeste and Herman nervous, force mistakes, ask innocent questions that would reveal lies, a dual strategy. The law would handle justice. I would handle pressure. I pulled my drafting table closer and grabbed blue painter's tape from a drawer. Within an hour, I'd created a massive timeline across my study wall. November to March. Every financial transaction pinned in place, every text message printed and positioned, every video timestamp marked, lines connected events in blue ink. Patterns emerged like a blueprint. Mark discovered the affair in January. There was a confrontation, captured in one of the audio files. Celeste denied everything. Mark didn't push. Instead, he started documenting. He installed the hidden camera in February. By March, he had everything. But they moved first. At 2 in the morning, I burned 3 DVDs from the flash drive contents. I labeled each one with dates and contents, then placed them in separate locations. One in my safe. One would go to a safety deposit box tomorrow. One to my lawyer, also tomorrow. Redundancy. An engineer's instinct. Then I started writing. A 10-page summary of all evidence. Who, what, when, where, how. Clear, factual, unemotional, names, dates, dollar amounts. This was what I'd give the FBI, not drama or accusations, just facts with supporting documentation. At 3 in the morning, I stopped being analytical. I saw Mark's face, 5 years old, missing his front teeth, showing me a drawing he made at school, 12 years old, helping me frame the garage expansion, serious about measuring twice before cutting. 28 years old, holding newborn Emma, tears streaming down his face from pure joy. The grief hit like a waveform collapse, sudden and total. I put my head in my hands and let it come. My son was dead, murdered, for money, by the woman he'd loved enough to marry, trusted enough to build a life with. But the wave passed. It had to. Emotion wouldn't help Mark now. Strategy would. I looked up the FBI Seattle field office address, 1110 3rd Avenue. I wouldn't call ahead. I'd walk in at opening time. Physical presence is harder to dismiss than a phone call. I'd ask for whoever handles insurance fraud and homicide. This wasn't a local crime anymore. It was federal. I also knew Celeste would call soon, maybe today. She'd want to establish control, cut me off from Emma completely. I needed to be ready. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and practiced. Of course, Celeste. Whatever you think is best. My voice sounded broken, defeated. Perfect. She needed to believe I was harmless, no threat. Just a grieving old man who'd accepted his place. Superiority makes people careless. Celeste would relax, make mistakes, say things she shouldn't. And I'd record every word. Washington is a two-party consent state for recordings, so I'd tell her up front. She wouldn't care. She thought she was invincible. Dawn came slowly. Gray light filtered through the study window. I heard a neighbor's truck start across the street. Someone heading to work. Normal life, continuing. But my life had changed permanently. I looked at the timeline covering my wall. Everything organized, evidence cataloged, strategy planned. I showered, shaved, dressed in clean slacks and a button-down shirt. Professional appearance mattered. At 8 in the morning, I'd drive to the FBI field office. But first, I opened my safe and removed a small jewelry box. Inside was the watch Mark wore at his high school graduation. Silver, simple, a gift from me. I slipped it onto my wrist. Too small, but it worked. "You're coming with me today," I said quietly. I picked up my briefcase, checked that the flash drive copy was inside along with my summary document, and walked to the front door. Keys in hand, watch on wrist. Evidence secured. The door closed behind me with a solid click. The FBI Seattle field office occupied a modern building at 1110 3rd Avenue. Glass and steel, federal flags hanging motionless in the morning air. I parked in a public garage 2 blocks away and walked, briefcase gripping my hand like an anchor. Security was exactly what I expected. Metal detectors, ID check, a visitor log that required my signature and stated purpose. I wrote clearly, evidence of federal crimes, insurance fraud, and homicide. The receptionist's expression shifted from routine boredom to sharp attention. She picked up a phone, spoke quietly, then gestured to a row of chairs. "Someone will be with you shortly." 15 minutes passed. I sat with the briefcase on my lap, watching agents move through the lobby with purpose. Everything here was documented. Cameras in every corner, badge readers at every door. Good. Documentation protected everyone. Finally, a door opened. "Mr. Young?" The man was mid-40s, trim and professional in a gray suit. FBI credentials clipped to his belt. "I'm Special Agent Robert Harris. Please come with me." He led me to an interview room on the 3rd floor. Sparse furniture, table, 3 chairs, recording equipment mounted on the wall. A second agent stood in the corner, introduced as Agent Chen. Witness protocol. This was official. Harris gestured to a chair. "Tell me why you're here." I opened my briefcase with deliberate care. The flash drive came out first, still in its manila envelope. Then my summary document, spiral bound, then printed screenshots in plastic sleeves. I arranged everything on the table. "My name is Edward Young. 5 days ago, my son Mark died in what was called a construction accident. I have evidence it was murder." Harris's expression didn't change, but he pulled a notepad closer. "Go on." I spoke for 30 minutes, chronologically, calmly. The funeral. The nurse who gave me Mark's envelope. The flash drive contents, videos of my daughter-in-law with her lover, text messages planning my son's death, financial records showing systematic theft. Harris listened without interrupting, but his pen never stopped moving. When I finished, he asked, "Do you have the original flash drive?" "In my safe at home. I brought a copy for chain of custody reasons." Harris almost smiled. "Smart. He inserted the flash drive into his laptop and began clicking through files. The first video played, 30 seconds of Celeste and Herman kissing, then discussing insurance money. Harris paused it. "This is admissible quality. Hidden camera?" "My son installed it. I don't know where. Bedroom clearly." Harris opened the text messages. His eyes narrowed as he read. After several minutes, he looked up. "Mr. Young, when did your son die? What day?" "Wednesday, March 13th, morning." Harris turned his laptop so I could see the screen. Herman's message from 6 weeks prior. Inspection scheduled Thursday. I'll loosen the bolts Tuesday night. Accident happens Wednesday morning. If these messages are authentic, Harris said, they show premeditation, first-degree murder conspiracy. They're authentic. Mark documented everything for 3 months. Harris reviewed my written summary, occasionally cross-referencing the flash drive contents. His partner, Agent Chen, watched silently but took notes. 20 minutes passed. Finally, Harris closed the laptop. "We'll need to keep this flash drive for evidence processing." I pulled a printed chain of custody form from my briefcase. "I'd like documentation of the transfer." This time Harris did smile. "You have an engineering background?" 40 years. He signed the form, gave me a copy, and leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Young, these are serious allegations. The financial fraud alone, forged signatures, wire transfers, insurance applications, that's federal jurisdiction. Add conspiracy to commit murder, and we're looking at decades in prison. If convicted." "If convicted," Harris agreed. "Which brings me to my next point. I need you to promise me something." "What?" "No contact with the suspects, no confrontations, no personal investigation. If you approach Celeste Young or Herman Clark, you could compromise everything we're building. Evidence gathered improperly becomes inadmissible. Do you understand?" I nodded. "I'm 64 years old, Agent Harris. I'm not going to fight anyone. I want them in prison. That's justice." "Good. Keep that perspective." He stood, signaling the interview was ending. "We'll begin forensic analysis immediately. Financial records, video authentication, timeline verification. This will take time, possibly weeks or months. Can you be patient?" "I've waited 64 years to learn what patience really means. I can wait." Harris walked me to the elevator. As the doors opened, he said, "We'll contact you with updates. And Mr. Young, I'm sorry for your loss. We'll do everything we can." I stepped into the elevator and rode down alone. Outside, the spring afternoon was bright and warming. I walked to my truck but didn't drive home immediately. Instead, I went to a small diner on Capitol Hill and ordered coffee. The place was nearly empty. Mid-afternoon lull. I opened my notebook and wrote a script for when Celeste called. Because she would call. Probably today. She'd want to establish dominance, remind me I had no rights to Emma. I needed to sound broken, defeated, harmless. My phone buzzed at exactly 3 o'clock. Celeste. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello?" My voice carried exhaustion. I didn't have to fake. "Edward, we need to talk." Sharp, impatient. "I'm calling about boundaries. You need to understand that Emma is my daughter. I decide when you see her, not you. I just want to see her occasionally, that's all. I miss her. She needs stability, not constant interference from you. You'll see her when I decide." "Of course. You're her mother. You know what's best." The words tasted like rust, but I kept my tone submissive. "Exactly. I'm glad you understand. I'll call you, maybe in a few weeks." She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in the diner, phone still in my hand. Her arrogance was perfect. She genuinely believed she controlled everything. The thought almost made me smile. I paid for my coffee, left a tip, and walked back to my truck. The sun felt warm on my face. Mark loved spring. We used to go hiking in the Cascades this time of year. Tiger Mountain, Rattlesnake Ledge, trails where the evergreens still held morning mist. Before starting the engine, I checked my phone's recording app. The entire conversation with Celeste was saved. Washington requires two-party consent for recordings, but I'd told her at the start of the call. She'd laughed. "Fine, record it. I have nothing to hide." Another mistake. I backed up the file to cloud storage, then drove toward my bank. I needed to open a safety deposit box, secure the original flash drive. One more layer of protection. The wheels were turning now. The FBI would handle the legal side. I would handle the rest. 3 weeks after my FBI meeting, I sat in a downtown office on the 20th floor, watching Elliott Bay through floor-to-ceiling windows. Ships moved slowly across gray water. The sign on the door read, Julia West, a state attorney. Agent Harris called weekly with brief updates. We're building the case. Stay patient. But patience didn't mean inaction. I'd researched Washington state inheritance law. I'd found a lever, Mark's will. Now I needed a professional to pull it. The door opened. Julia West was sharp-eyed, 40-something, wearing a navy suit that meant business. We shook hands. Tell me why you're here, Mr. Young. My son died last month. His widow is preventing me from seeing my granddaughter. I want to understand my legal options. You want custody? I want Emma safe. If that requires custody, yes. Julia leaned back in her chair. That's a difficult fight. Mothers have presumption of custody in Washington state. What grounds would we have? I pulled Mark's will from my briefcase. My son updated this 8 months ago. I'd like you to read the guardianship provisions. She took the document, adjusted her glasses, and read silently. After 2 minutes, her eyebrows rose. She read aloud. In the event of my death under circumstances deemed suspicious by law enforcement, or if my spouse is found unfit or unwilling to serve as guardian to my minor children, I hereby designate my father, Edward Young, as executor and sole beneficiary. She looked up. Your son was very specific, almost like he anticipated trouble. He was an engineer, like me. We planned for contingencies. Is there an active investigation into your son's death? Yes, federal investigation, insurance fraud, and possible homicide. Julia set down the will. Then this document is very enforceable. Your son knew something was wrong. This is his insurance policy. She pulled a legal pad closer. Your daughter-in-law likely assumes she's the automatic beneficiary. Most spouses are, but this will supersede that. And the custody clause is actionable if we can demonstrate instability. How do we proceed? We file a petition for temporary guardianship of Emma Young in King County Family Court. Grounds: mother's erratic behavior, emotional instability, inability to provide stable environment during the grief period. It's legally sound, and it will provoke a reaction. That's what I'm counting on. Julia's expression sharpened. You want her to lose control? I want her to show who she really is, to the court, to everyone. That's strategic, but be careful. If she feels cornered, she might become dangerous. I wrote a check for the $5,000 retainer. Julia's paralegal filed the petition electronically that afternoon. Within hours, Celeste would be notified. I imagined her face, the shock morphing into fury. Anger leads to errors. That evening, my phone rang. Celeste. I answered, immediately stating as I always did. This call is being recorded per Washington state law. Do you consent to continue? A pause. Then her voice sharp as broken glass. You filed for custody? Are you insane? I'm concerned about Emma's well-being. You've been under significant stress. Stress? You have no idea what stress is. You're trying to take my daughter. I'm only thinking of what's best is you staying out of our lives. Forever. You're a toxic old man who couldn't even keep his own son safe. The words hung in the air. I said nothing. Let the silence work. Say something. I'm sorry you feel that way. She screamed, wordless, pure rage, then hung up. I sat at my kitchen table, phone still in hand. I replayed the recording. Her threats were crystal clear, every word documented. I saved the file. Celeste threats, May 15.m4a. First, I emailed it to Julia with subject line, Exhibit A. Then to Agent Harris, additional evidence of defendant's instability. I opened my notebook to a fresh page. At the top, next steps. Below that, 1. Insurance company. 2. Prepare for counterattack. 3. Document everything. My phone buzzed. Text from Julia. Court hearing scheduled for June 12th. Temporary guardianship decision. Prepare for her to bring legal representation. I texted back. Understood. Thank you. Celeste wouldn't surrender quietly. She'd hire attorneys. She'd fight back. Good. Every action she took, every word she spoke, every move she made became evidence. The angrier she got, the more mistakes she'd make. The trap was set. Now I just needed to wait for her to step into it. 2 weeks later, I stood in my kitchen holding my phone, listening to the third threatening call this week. Male voice, rough around the edges. Back off while you still can. I didn't respond. Let the silence stretch. Then I hung up. These calls confirmed what I suspected. Celeste and Herman were panicking. Good. My doorbell rang mid-morning. A process server handed me papers. Celeste Young versus Edward Young, civil harassment. I signed for delivery and read the complaint on my porch steps. The allegations were absurd. Unwanted contact, threatening behavior, intentional emotional distress. She wanted a restraining order. Julia had warned me this might come. It's a distraction tactic, she'd said. Stay calm. I photographed every page, emailed them to Julia with a note. Please advise. That evening, my phone rang. Blocked number. I hit record before answering. Yeah? Male voice. Edward Young, you need to stop what you're doing. Drop the custody thing. Walk away. Who is this? Someone who doesn't want to see an old man get hurt. I'm recording this conversation. Please identify yourself. Click, dial tone. I saved the file, sent it to Harris. He called back within an hour. How many calls have you received? 7 in the past 10 days. All blocked numbers. Same voice. You're sure it's Herman Clark? I'm an engineer. I recognize patterns. Same vocal inflections, same word choices. It's him. We're tracking the calls. Blocked numbers don't protect him. We can still trace tower pings and device identifiers. Let him keep calling. Every threat adds years to his sentence. The next night, I drove to the Green Lake Library branch. I signed in as a guest user, sat at a public terminal in the corner, back to the wall, baseball cap, glasses, anonymous among students and job seekers. I worked quickly, created a new email account, concerned.citizen, Yaum25 Proton Mail, com, attached 2 files from my USB drive, screenshots of Herman and Celeste's text messages discussing the plan and Wednesday morning. Subject line, fraud alert, Mark Young, death claim. Recipient, Pacific Northwest Life Insurance, Fraud Investigation Department, 10 minutes total. I cleared the browser history, logged out, left. 48 hours later, Agent Harris called. The insurance company contacted us. They've frozen the $2 million payout. They're cooperating with our investigation. I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. The financial noose was tightening. The phone threats escalated. Herman's desperation bled through every call. You're dead, old man. I know where you live. This is your last warning. I never responded beyond, this call is recorded. Each threat went straight to Harris. The FBI agent's instructions were clear. Let him keep talking. He's building our case for us. I met Harris at a coffee shop in Fremont. His choice, neutral ground. He arrived in casual clothes, no badge visible. We sat outside, speaking quietly. He reviewed my recordings on his phone. Voice matches the man at the funeral? I'm certain. Forensics will confirm it. This helps tremendously. He leaned forward. The insurance freeze has created financial pressure. We've tracked their spending. They borrowed against the expected payout. Personal loans, credit cards. Without that insurance money, they're drowning in debt. Desperate people make mistakes. Exactly. Which is why you need to be careful. Herman's threats suggest he might escalate from words to action. I installed additional security that week. New deadbolts, window sensors, a doorbell camera. Not from fear, but from prudence. I also varied my routines. Different routes to the grocery store, different times for errands. Basic counter-surveillance. Julia called about Celeste's harassment lawsuit. We need to respond formally, but discovery will be interesting. She'll have to prove her claims. And when she can't, her case collapses, but it buys her time. That's the strategy. Delay your custody petition. Late one night, I sat in my study reviewing the week's developments. On my wall, the timeline had grown. Red entries for the lawsuit, insurance freeze, phone threats, lines connecting everything. The pattern was clear. Celeste and Herman were in freefall. My phone buzzed. Text from Harris. Need to meet tomorrow. Developments in the case. Important. I texted back. Understood. Same location? I stood, stretched, looked at Mark's graduation photo on my desk. My son's face smiled back. Young, hopeful, trusting in a future that was stolen from him. Soon, I said quietly. Justice is slow, but it's coming. Outside my window, a car drove slowly past. Dark sedan, tinted windows. It paused briefly, then continued. I made a note, dark sedan, 11:47 p.m. Thursday. I photographed the street from my window, document everything. The following morning, my doorbell camera captured someone approaching at 6 o'clock. They didn't knock. They left an envelope under my doormat and left quickly, face concealed by a hood. I retrieved it carefully, wearing gloves. Inside, a printed note, no signature, block letters, drop the custody case or Emma pays the price. I photographed it, bagged it, immediately called Harris. They just made their biggest mistake, I told him, threatening a child. How long until you arrest them? Harris's response was measured but determined. Very soon, days, not weeks. This threat might be enough for a warrant. Hold tight. The end game was approaching. 3 days after the written threat against Emma, I sat across from Agent Harris in an FBI interview room. Not a coffee shop this time, but official space with recording equipment and secure walls. The threat note lay in an evidence bag on the table between us. Harris tapped the plastic with his pen. We've accelerated the timeline. Threatening a child crosses a line. We're bringing them in for questioning, separately. I nodded. Divide and conquer. Engineers study game theory. I understood the strategy. Harris spread surveillance photos across the table. Herman and Celeste arguing outside a bank. Text message logs showing hostility between them. Financial stress is destroying their partnership, Harris explained. Herman borrowed $80,000 from loan sharks. Celeste maxed out credit cards. Neither has income. They're blaming each other. Drowning people thrash. Exactly. Herman comes in first. We'll tell him Celeste is cooperating. Classic prisoner's dilemma. One of them will break. Harris described Herman's interview later. I wasn't present, but he summarized. Herman arrived cocky, left sweating. FBI showed him evidence. His phone pinging near the construction site the night before Mark's death. His fingerprints on scaffold bolts. Witness statements placing him where he claimed he wasn't. Herman's story kept changing. First, he wasn't at the site Tuesday night. Then he admitted he was checking equipment. Each contradiction documented on camera. I want a lawyer, he finally said. But the damage was done. While the FBI tightened their noose, family court convened for the custody hearing. King County Courthouse, small courtroom, wood paneling, and fluorescent lights. I sat with Julia at the plaintiff's table. Celeste sat alone. Her attorney had withdrawn after she stopped paying. The social worker testified first. Professional tone, clinical observations. Ms. Young has exhibited erratic behavior, multiple threatening phone calls documented, public disturbances witnessed. The minor child requires stability, which Mr. Young can provide. Julia was thorough. In your professional opinion, where should Emma Young reside? With her grandfather. He has a stable home, no criminal record, strong existing relationship with the child. He's retired and available to provide consistent care. I recommend temporary custody pending further evaluation. The judge reviewed documents silently, then looked up. The court finds in favor of the petitioner. Temporary custody granted to Edward Young, effective immediately. I picked up Emma from the social services office that afternoon. She'd been in temporary foster care for 48 hours during the evaluation. She carried a small backpack and her stuffed rabbit. In the lobby, I knelt to her level. Hi, sweetheart. Remember me? She nodded, clutching her rabbit tighter. We're going to go to Grandpa's house. You'll have your own room. Would you like that? She didn't smile, but she took my hand. Small fingers in my weathered palm. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about protecting an innocent child. As I loaded Emma's belongings into my truck, Celeste appeared. She'd been waiting, watching. She approached rapidly, voice rising before she even reached us. You can't take her. She's mine. I instinctively stepped in front of Emma. 2 security guards intercepted Celeste, taking her arms gently but firmly. Ma'am, you need to leave now. She struggled briefly, then her face twisted, rage mixed with something that might have been desperation. I'll fight this. I'll fight all of you. You'll see. News cameras captured everything. I turned away, shielded Emma's view, guided her to the truck. She climbed in silently, buckled herself with practiced movements. That evening, the footage aired on King 5 News. Custody battle turns ugly outside Seattle courthouse. I watched it on my laptop after Emma fell asleep, studied Celeste's face, The loss of control, the public unraveling. I felt no triumph, just weariness. I checked on Emma in her new room. She was curled around her rabbit, breathing softly. I pulled the blanket higher over her shoulders. My phone buzzed. Harris. I saw the news, that courthouse scene. Emma was terrified. I had to shield her. I know, but that footage actually helps us. Shows instability. The prosecutor will use it. We move in 72 hours. Charges include first-degree murder, conspiracy, wire fraud. Both of them. Good. Emma needs closure. We all do. After hanging up, I sat in Emma's doorway watching her sleep. The nightlight cast soft shadows. Her chest rose and fell steadily. She was safe now. Another text from Harris. Warrant approved. Execution at 6 a.m. Thursday. Stay home with Emma. Media will be intense. I read it twice. Thursday, 2 days away. After 5 months of investigation, it came down to a Thursday morning raid. I typed back, understood. Thank you for everything. In my study, I updated the timeline on my wall. Red marker, arrests, Thursday early morning. The wall was covered now, months of documentation. Soon, I could take it all down. I set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. I wanted to be awake when justice was delivered, Thursday morning. I woke at 5:15, 15 minutes before my alarm. I lay still, listening to the house breathe. Emma slept down the hall. Silence wrapped around everything like a blanket. I rose quietly, made coffee, turned on the television with volume low. Local news played, traffic reports, weather. Nothing yet. I checked my phone, no messages. I sat on the couch and waited. At 6:04 a.m., my phone buzzed. Harris. It's done, both in custody, clean arrests, no incidents. I exhaled slowly, set the phone down, covered my face with my hands and allowed myself one moment, not tears, just breath. Deep, shuddering breath. 5 months compressed into that single text message. Harris called minutes later. Both suspects are in custody. SWAT teams executed warrants simultaneously at 6 a.m. No complications. They're being transported to federal holding now. Arraignment tomorrow. Charges include first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and insurance fraud. Thank you for everything. You did the work, Edward. You gave us the case. I just executed it. By 6:30, news helicopters circled the arrest locations. Breaking news banners scrolled across every channel. Seattle couple arrested in insurance fraud murder scheme. I flipped between stations. Aerial footage of FBI agents in windbreakers, yellow crime scene tape. Reporters standing outside Celeste's Queen Anne apartment building, outside Herman's construction site in Bellevue. A reporter's voice. FBI agents arrested Celeste Young and Herman Clark early this morning on charges of first-degree murder and insurance fraud. Cut to an FBI spokesperson. This was a calculated, premeditated scheme to murder Mark Young and collect life insurance proceeds. Evidence includes video surveillance, text messages, and forensic analysis of the construction accident site. My son's name on television, his photo, the one from his work badge, smiling, trusting. The reporter continued. If convicted, both suspects face life in prison without possibility of parole. I used my phone to record segments of the coverage, not for vindication, for Emma. Someday when she's older, she'll need to understand what happened. This documentation will help her process the truth. At 7, I heard small footsteps on the stairs. Emma appeared, rubbing her eyes. I immediately switched to a children's channel. Cartoons played cheerfully. She climbed into my lap with her rabbit. Morning, sweetheart. We ate breakfast together. I made pancakes with chocolate chips arranged in a smiley face. She giggled, the first real laugh I'd heard from her in days. The sound warmed something in my chest that had been cold for months. Later, while she played with blocks in the living room, she looked up at me. Grandpa? Yes, sweetheart? When is Mommy coming back? I knelt to her level. I don't know, honey. Mommy has to deal with some very serious grown-up problems. She might not be able to come back for a very long time. Did she do something bad? Yes, she did. But that's not your fault. None of this is your fault. You're loved and you're safe, and that's what matters. She hugged her rabbit tighter, but nodded. Children understand more than we think they do. After lunch, Emma napped. I went to my study and began dismantling the timeline wall. Each piece of paper came down slowly, methodically. Timeline entries in one box, financial documents in another, photos in a third. Everything organized, labeled, stored in my safe. The wall returned to blank beige, symbolic closure. My phone buzzed throughout the afternoon, Julia congratulating me, Harris providing updates, neighbors who'd seen the news. I responded briefly, graciously. That evening, after Emma's bedtime, I sat on my back porch. Summer in Seattle, long daylight, cool breeze. I held a beer but didn't drink much, just needed something in my hands. I thought about Mark's last moments, wondered if he felt the scaffolding shift beneath him, hoped it was quick, knew it didn't matter now. Justice was done. They were in cells, federal holding. Tomorrow they'd stand before a judge, hear the charges read aloud, realize their lives were over. I thought I'd feel vindicated, triumphant. But I just felt tired, old. Mark was still gone. Justice doesn't bring back the dead. But Emma was safe. That mattered. She'd grow up knowing her father was a good man, knowing he loved her, knowing someone fought for truth on his behalf. Mark, I kept my promise. I found out what happened. I made them pay. Now I have one job left. Take care of your little girl. I won't fail. Inside, Emma's nightlight glowed through her window. I could see her small silhouette. I stood, stretched, felt my age in my joints. But I wasn't done. Emma needed me. That was enough purpose for whatever years remained. I went inside, checked on her one more time. She'd shifted position, hugging her rabbit. I adjusted her blanket, kissed her forehead gently. "Your daddy was a hero," I whispered. "He protected you even after he was gone. I'll do the same." I returned to my study. The blank wall where the timeline hung seemed larger now, empty, ready for new memories, Emma's artwork, family photos, future moments. The past was documented and stored, time to build something new. 2 weeks after the arrests, I sat in the gallery of the U.S. District Court for Western District of Washington. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, construction industry observers, curious citizens drawn to spectacle. Emma was with a babysitter. I wouldn't expose her to this. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The trial of United States versus Celeste Young and Herman Clark began. My hands rested on my knees, steady. 5 months of preparation came down to this moment. Assistant U.S. Attorney Margaret Chen stood before the jury. Her voice carried clearly through the modern courtroom, wood paneling, high ceilings, the federal seal behind the bench. "This was not passion," she said. "This was calculation, cold-blooded murder for money." She outlined the conspiracy. How Celeste met Herman at a construction company holiday party. How the affair began. How envy and greed transformed into murder plot. She promised the jury they'd see video evidence, hear audio recordings, review financial documents that prove premeditation. Then the evidence began. Mark's flash drive entered the record. Courtroom monitors displayed the bedroom footage, Celeste and Herman discussing the plan, the insurance money, the freedom they'd have. I watched the jury's faces, horror, disgust. One older woman shook her head continuously. Audio recordings from Mark's car played next. He'd installed a voice-activated recorder after suspecting his wife. Herman's voice filled the courtroom. "Loosen the support brackets. Wednesday morning inspection. It'll look like equipment failure." Text messages appeared on screens. 6 weeks of planning spelled out in digital messages they thought were private. "Make it look natural. No traces. The insurance pays $2 million, split 50-50. I watched Celeste. She sat rigid, staring straight ahead. When her spending records appeared, $8,000 at Nordstrom, $12,000 at a jewelry store, all charged while married to Mark. She closed her eyes. Herman shifted constantly, whispered urgently to his attorney. Pure panic. The financial evidence was devastating. Chen presented forged insurance applications, bank transfers, Celeste emptying Mark's savings account in 3 transactions, loans taken in Mark's name, a paper trail of systematic theft. The defense attorneys turned on each other. Celeste's lawyer blamed Herman. My client was manipulated by this man. She was vulnerable. He exploited her. Herman's lawyer countered. Herman Clark was a tool. Celeste Young masterminded everything. The alliance that killed my son collapsed spectacularly in open court. An FBI forensic expert testified about the scaffolding. Herman loosened critical bolts Tuesday night, March 11th. Security footage showed him at the site. Tool marks matched his equipment. Mark fell Wednesday morning during inspection. Could this have been accidental? Chen asked. No, the bolts were deliberately turned counterclockwise multiple times. This was intentional sabotage. Construction workers testified. Herman's co-workers saw him working alone Tuesday night, called out to him. Herman acted startled, defensive. Just checking equipment, he'd said. Next morning, Mark fell. The math was simple. I sat through 3 days of testimony. Court adjourned around 5 each evening. I drove home to Emma. She'd ask how my day was. Fine, sweetheart. How was yours? We'd have dinner, normalcy. Life outside the courtroom continued. When Mark's professional photo appeared on monitors, smiling, trusting, my jaw tightened briefly. But I didn't look away. This was about justice, not grief. Agent Harris testified about the investigation. When Chen asked if Mark knew his life was in danger, Harris was unequivocal. Without question. He documented everything. He was preparing for exactly what happened. The prosecution rested after 3 days. The defense presented minimal case, character witnesses who accomplished nothing, weak attempts to discredit FBI evidence that failed completely. That evening, I sat in my study reviewing news coverage. Headlines, overwhelming evidence in Seattle murder for insurance trial. Defendants turn on each other in court. Emma slept upstairs. I looked at Mark's photo on my desk. Tomorrow they'll deliberate. Tomorrow or the next day, there will be a verdict. And then it's done, son. Closing arguments happened Friday morning. Chen was powerful. Mark Young knew he was going to die. He left evidence so his murderers couldn't escape justice. Honor his memory. Find them guilty. The jury deliberated Friday afternoon. I waited at home, unable to focus. Julia texted updates. Hours passed. Then at 4, jury has reached verdict. Court reconvenes Monday morning for reading. The weekend was surreal. I took Emma to the park, cooked meals, read bedtime stories. But underneath, anticipation built. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the back porch until 2 in the morning, watching stars. Mark used to point out constellations when he was young. I found Orion, fitting. Monday, the hunt would end. Monday morning, last week of August. I stood outside the courthouse at 8. The building hadn't opened yet, but news vans already lined the street. Emma was with Julia's assistant. I needed to be present for this moment. The doors opened at 8:30. I entered, passed through security, took my usual seat. The courtroom filled quickly. Everyone sensed finality. Court reconvened at 9 sharp. Judge Torres asked, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreperson stood. "We have, Your Honor." My heart pounded. First real emotion I'd allowed in weeks. The clerk read, Count 1, murder in the first degree, Defendant Celeste Young, guilty. The word hit like a hammer. Defendant Herman Clark, guilty. The pattern repeated through 7 counts. Conspiracy, wire fraud, insurance fraud, all guilty. 14 findings of guilt total, overwhelming, complete, irrevocable. Celeste collapsed into sobs. Her attorney caught her, helped her into the chair. Herman stared blankly, then dropped his head into his hands. I felt no triumph, just completion. A job finished. Judge Torres thanked the jury, set sentencing for 2 weeks. I stood, buttoned my suit jacket, walked toward the exit. Reporters shouted questions in the hallway. I paused briefly. Justice has been served. My son can rest. My granddaughter is safe. That's all that matters. Then I continued walking. 2 weeks later, early September, I returned for sentencing. The courtroom was quieter this time. The verdict spectators gone, only serious observers remaining. Judge Torres delivered her statement with appropriate gravity. This was not a crime of passion. This was methodical, calculated murder for financial gain. Mark Young was a productive member of society, a father, a son. You took his life for money. She paused, looking directly at the defendants. The sentence of this court is 25 years to life imprisonment on each count of murder, to run consecutively with sentences for conspiracy and fraud. You will not be eligible for parole. The gavel fell. Final. Celeste and Herman were led away through the side door. Chains clinked. 5 months ago, they were free, confident. planning their new life with stolen money. Now, convicted murderers facing life imprisonment. The transformation was complete. Within days, family court granted me permanent legal custody of Emma. The will's provisions were executed. I became sole beneficiary of Mark's estate. Pacific Northwest Life Insurance released the $2 million death benefit. I immediately transferred it to an irrevocable trust fund for Emma, managed by professionals, untouchable until she's 25, except for education and emergency health needs. Mark's death bought Emma's future. Not the outcome anyone wanted, but at least something positive emerged. September arrived. Emma started pre-kindergarten. I enrolled her in play therapy to process the trauma. We established routines, breakfast together, walks to school, evening stories. The house filled with her drawings, her laughter. Slowly, carefully, healing began. One afternoon, I took Emma to Lakeview Cemetery. We walked the quiet paths between old trees and green grass. She held flowers carefully. Daisies, her favorite. At Mark's grave, the permanent headstone was now in place. Mark's name, his dates, beloved father and son. I knelt, placed my hand on the cool stone. I did what I promised. Justice won. Emma put the flowers in the ground vase. We stood together in silence. "Grandpa, can Daddy hear us?" she asked. "I like to think he can, sweetheart. I want to tell him I'm okay. I'm safe with you." My voice thickened. "He knows, Emma. Somehow he knows. He made sure you'd be okay. That was his last gift to you." "I love you, Grandpa." "I love you too, sweetheart. Always." We walked hand in hand back toward the parking lot. The cemetery path sloped gently downward. Late summer sun filtered through branches. Emma chattered about school, her new friends, a picture she'd drawn that morning. I listened, responded, engaged. But part of my mind remained at the grave, the words I'd spoken silently. "I kept my promise, son." We reached my truck. I lifted Emma into her car seat. She was getting heavier, growing so fast. Buckled her in carefully. She'd already lost one parent. I would never be careless with her safety. Driving home, Emma fell asleep in the back seat. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Peaceful, safe, loved. This was victory if there was such a thing. Not revenge, not even justice, really. Just a small girl sleeping safely while her grandfather drove her home. I pulled into the driveway, turned off the engine, sat for a moment in the silence. I was tired, bone-deep tired. But it was done. The fight was over. What remained was simpler. Be a good grandfather. Raise Emma well. Make sure Mark's sacrifice, and it was a sacrifice documenting his own murder, wasn't wasted. I carried Emma inside without waking her, laid her on the couch, covered her with a blanket. Then I went to my study one final time. I opened the safe, removed all the boxes of evidence, carried them to the garage. They'd stay there, archived in case Emma ever needed them. But they weren't my daily companions anymore. I returned to the living room. Emma still slept. I sat in my chair, picked up the book we were reading together. I'd finished the chapter when she woke. Outside, the neighborhood hummed with life. Kids playing, dogs barking, cars passing, normal sounds, safe sounds. I closed my eyes, just for a moment. And for the first time in 6 months, when I thought of Mark, I didn't see the crime scene. I saw his smile, heard his laugh, remembered the good years. The weight lifted. Not completely. It never would. But enough to breathe, enough to continue. Enough to be what Emma needs. Justice delivered, life continuing. That's all anyone can ask. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.